We are at the 2016 Ripcord Association reunion in Springfield, Missouri. We're talking now with Rick Hahn of Wakefield, Kansas, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, Rick, start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born November 9th in Howell, Michigan,
And what year?
1949.
Okay, and then did you grow up in that area?
Yes, I was in that area till I was 23 years old,
Okay, and
except for my 2 years in the service.
okay, now, excuse me here just 1 minute. I think we'll hear you fine, but just in case, we will do that. All right. So we are still rolling? Okay. Now, what did your family do for a living while you were growing up?
My father worked for the telephone company, and my mother worked for City Hall.
Okay, in Howell?
Yeah,
Okay. All right. And did you finish high school?
yes,
Okay. What year did you graduate?
1967.
Okay. And then what did you do after you finished high school?
Well, I worked in the summertime, then I went to Grand Rapids Junior College,
Okay.
and I played football, and then found college wasn't for me, so I went back the next year, and it just wasn't for me. So I quit school, and then I had a job, and then I went and talked to the lady at the draft board, and I asked her when. I said, when do I go now? She goes, well, she said, looks like June. And I said, okay. So then that's when I went to see the recruiter. And I said, can you get me back in? He said, sure.
Is it back in?
That's, yeah.
Or get you in earlier? Or
No, that was in 1975.
Okay, we're still just doing the first one here.
Okay.
So, so basically, so you were in college, and then were you in college before you went into the Army the first time, or was that?
Yes.
Okay, and so that's not for you. And then, do you expect to be drafted? And so you just went to the draft board.
Yeah. I checked with them to see when,
Okay.
and then so yeah, the first time I went and seen the recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the only thing you get off was infantry, so okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, but after that, I enlisted at the end of February of 1969, and then I went to my basic training in Fort Knox, Kentucky.
All right. And now, what was that like?
Well, it was a different lifestyle. Back then, we weren't as coddled as the kids are nowadays. It was legal for them to use physical, but but everything went on fine. I graduated from there.
All right. Now, I guess you played football. You were in good physical shape when you went in.
Mm-hmm.
So the physical side of training was not really a problem for you?
Not really.
Okay. What about the discipline part?
That was the hard part. Somebody telling you what to do every time. You got to put your shoes on, tie your boots, and things like that. And and then every night in the barracks in the bay that I lived in, we waxed the floor every night and buffed it and everything. So you had to keep things really, really clean. Your area had to be set up just so that every bunk and every area was uniform, and that was kind of hard to get used to.
Mm-hmm.
So you just used to use those things, but that was hard to get used to. It's a discipline.
All right. And did things improve at all toward the end of the training, or did they treat you any better?
Well, Yes, they did, you know, and it was, the farther you got into it, they treated you a little better, but they were still hard on you, even though they were hard on everybody, so you can't say just one individual, unless he was messed up all the time.
Okay, so in its own way, it was fair.
Yeah,
Okay,
I thought it was.
all right. I guess another question I should bring in here at this point. At the time that you went in, 69, I mean, Vietnam has gotten very hot. There are people, anti-war movements going, people are getting killed over there. How much were you aware of at that time when you went in?
I was pretty much aware of what was going on. I understand after I got out, I understand that the period of 69 and 70 was one of the worst parts of the war. And I'm like, oops, you know, I made it.
Yeah.
That was my reaction to it.
Okay.
But I didn't realize that at the time.
Yeah. Well, it can be hard when you're 20 years old or whatever to get what's going to happen.
Well, I was 18 when I went in. No, I was 19.
Okay.
I was 19 when I went in.
All right. So you get through basic. How long was that?
8 weeks.
Okay. And then what's your next step?
I went to advanced infantry training in Fort Gordon, Georgia.
Okay. And now what did they do there?
That's where you learned all your infantry tactics, and that's where I learned the mortar. That's where they taught us how to use it. The mortar itself and the FDC part, the Fire Direction Center part. They taught us to use both, you know, how to do both. So you were aware of it when you got to there was in my graduating class there was one guy that didn't go to Vietnam. He went to White Sands, New Mexico. And I'm like, okay.
Okay, but the rest of you all go there.
Yeah.
Now, the group that you were with, were they kind of mostly draftees, or do you not really know?
Combination.
Okay.
Combination of both.
And did they treat you any better in AIT than they did in basic?
A little better, you know, because you were a little more advanced and you already got your discipline. You were a little more, but they kept up the discipline and things. So I mean, it was. I thought it was fair there.
Okay.
Also.
Did you get to go off base at all?
No. Not that I remember it.
Okay,
For
or you might have been able to get a pass, but you didn't, that you can recall.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so is that another 8 weeks?
Yes.
Okay.
It was.
And now, basically, what time of year is it now when you finish up at Fort Gordon?
Oh, let's see. Be June.
Okay, be about right.
Yeah, June.
All right, and having completed that, now what happens to you?
I had a month leave, and then I went to Vietnam.
Okay, now what's the process for getting you from Michigan to Vietnam?
I had to go to the West Coast to, where did I go to?
Was it Oakland or Seattle? Or?
Oakland. Okay. Yeah, I went to Oakland for sure, because I came back to Seattle.
All right, and then what's at Oakland? What's that place like?
Just a processing center to, you know, so they know, so the Army knows where you're at. You know, they fill out all these forms and all this and stuff before you go over.
Right.
And then when you get there, you of course fill out some more forms and stuff.
Okay. And now, when you flew over, were you on a chartered commercial jet or a military plane?
Tiger Airlines. And ironically, when I went to Desert Storm, there were, I can't remember what airlines we flew on, but there was the carts that they have in them go down the middle. There was one cart, I was sitting in the back there, but I was sitting in the front row. And it said, the cart said Tiger Airlines on it. And I'm like, oh no, this ain't right. So I asked one of the stewardesses, she said, I asked her, I said, was this an old Tigers Airline plane? She says, yes, it was. And I'm like, it's ironic.
Mm-hmm.
So I told her what the deal was, you know. It's like, wow.
Yeah, well, at least the plane was still in one piece.
Yeah,
Okay.
it
So,
got me there.
yeah, do you remember where you stopped on the way over?
We stopped in Greece.
No, I meant for to go to Vietnam.
We went to Alaska, and then we went to Japan, and then we went to Vietnam.
Okay. And where did you land in Vietnam?
Tan Snu.
Okay. And what time of day did you get there? Was it day or night?
It was afternoon.
Okay. And what's your first impression of Vietnam when you got there?
Hot.
You'd been training in Georgia going into the summer, but this was worse.
Yeah. Oh, you know. It's like you step on the tarmac and the heat.
Hmm.
You know, of course, we're talking about the tarmac, so it makes it a little different. Yeah. When I got there, we went to a in processing, and that night they picked people for guard duty. One little guard shed just looked big enough for one guy, and a radio and stuff. And that night I was out there in this little guard shack, and there was incoming rounds somewhere around there, and of course me, I have no idea what this is, right? So I'm like, it didn't bother me at that point because I had no idea what it was. So when I found out what it was, it's like, oh, this is what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't, unbeknownst, I found a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
But and then the next thing I remember, the next day, they after we finished more in processing, they put us all in a formation, and they said, all the infantry people move over here. So yeah, okay, here I go. And then they started with the other group that was left. They started picking the clerks and cooks and other MOSs. They started picking these people out. And when they got them picked out, they said, okay, so you guys move over here with the infantry. So you're now infantry. Yeah. And these guys are like, you know, so that was interesting.
How long did it take to get your unit assignment?
Well, not very long. Within the week I was there.
And how do you spend the week? Do they do any orientation training for you there?
Yes. They tell you the customs of the country, and they tell you, then they tell you what unit you're going to and stuff like that. So I ended up with the 101st.
Okay. Now, did you know anything about the different units, or was there any word about who was safe and who wasn't? Or okay.
Well, yeah, there was a few things like that, but not very many that I remember.
All right. So how now? Where was the 101st operating at that point?
They were in I Corps, and I went to Camp Evans, and they also had some people. We had a group of battalion around Way, where the tent offensive was. And,
but you're in the northern part of South Vietnam.
Right.
Okay. So
just I was between Way and Coventry is where Camp Evans.
Right. Okay. Now, how did they get you up there?
Airplane.
Okay. Now, is it a military aircraft or?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. And when you
C-130s.
Okay. And when you get to Camp Evans, now what do they do with you?
We'll go through war in process. and then you're first you start a brigade, and you're more paperwork. Then you're dispersed to the different units. Then
So what unit did you get assigned to?
Echo Company 506.
Uh,
Or headquarters company.
Yeah.
Headquarters 506.
okay.
Second of 506.
The 2nd Battalion, 506th Regiment. Okay. Now, at the time that you joined the unit, were they in the field or were they at Camp Evans?
I don't remember for sure.
Okay. Now, we've gotten you, so this is, what, about August or so
Well,
of 69?
well, yeah, within the first 10 days of August, because I got there on the 3rd of August.
Right, okay. So, made it that far, and what kind of reception did you get in the unit? Did anybody tell you anything, or?
Well, yes, but you go through the usual being a new guy.
Mm-hmm.
You go through the usual things, and the guys that are getting ready to leave for really harass you, and the guys that have a while to go yet, they harass you too. So it's I guess a tradition type thing.
Okay. Now, when you join, a mortar unit's a little bit different from a regular line infantry company, because you're just a single platoon that's part of a kind of collective
Right.
company. And how many mortars were there in that platoon?
We had 3 sections, so that would be 369.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then how many men in a mortar crew?
Let's see, about 4, 5. See, gunner, assistant gunner, 2 ammo bearers, a squad leader.
Okay, so 5. Now, did you have normally 5 guys most of the time, or did you have less?
Pretty much. My section did.
Okay.
The other 2 I don't really know a lot about.
Yeah. Now, how did you spend your first month or so in Vietnam? You get assigned to the unit, you join them. Now, what are they doing?
Well, when it was time to go to the jungle, you went to the jungle.
Mm-hmm.
And you stayed out there. Well, I'm not sure how long we stayed. I know it was a while. It was 2 weeks or more. We stayed out there. And when you come back, you have the run of the area.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of the people spent their time when they're not in the field in the EM club,
Mm-hmm.
enlisted.
Right. Okay. Now, do you remember much about the first trip out to the field?
No,
Okay.
I don't.
All right. Now, when you would go out in the field, now you got mortars. Now, would you be humping it around with the infantry, or would you go on to a fire base or an LZ or something and just stay there?
Sometimes we went to an LZ. Sometimes we went out with the line company. My squad mostly went out with Charlie Company.
Okay.
And we supported them. They moved, we moved with them.
Okay. Now, what's the job there for a mortar team? You've got to move. I mean, 81 millimeter mortar, right? Okay, fairly big piece of equipment. How did the crew divide up the work, or how does it work to take a mortar with you in the field?
Well, the gunner took the sight with him. The assistant gunner carried the tube. And the ammo bearers, they carried the base plate.
Okay. Did they trade off carrying it, or did they
I'm
have?
sure, yes.
Yeah. But how much did the base plate weigh, do you think?
That one weighed, I don't remember for sure. Heavy enough not to want to carry
Not
it.
to carry to them, especially in the
But
heat
as
in
you
the
go,
jungle. Yeah.
as you go up through the positions, and the higher you get up, the less you have to carry.
Right. Yeah. So carrying the gun sight sounds like the best deal out of that group.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I don't know. I want to say that the gunner carried the tube, and the assistant gunner carried the tripod,
Mm-hmm.
and then the ammo bearers carried the ammo plus the base plate.
Right.
And
Maybe the squad leader got the sight?
Yes. Yeah. One thing I can say about the 11 Bravos, the grunts, is that I never had seen any problem when my squad went out with the I never had any problems of the grunts carrying an extra round or two for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd have that much more animal. They never complained.
And were you able to support them effectively in the field? I mean, could you help them, I guess?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's in their interest to
Right.
probably have some more rounds.
When they would set up a perimeter, we sat right in the middle.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Okay. Now, in the first few months when you're out there, kind of August, September, October, and so forth, what area were you operating in?
Igor.
Okay. But you were up in the hills most of the time?
We spent some, yeah, because I don't remember what month it was, but when the 3rd Marine Division pulled off the DMZ,
Mm-hmm.
we went up there
Okay.
to support them while they pulled back.
Right.
And we had some incidents that happened up there.
Right. Now, now in that first part, do you know, because I think a lot of the unit was operating in the Ashaw Valley. This is after Hamburger Hill,
Right.
and we're kind of moving around, not a lot of fighting necessarily, but.
We moved around a lot with the companies, and sometimes we sit on LZs, and sometimes we sit on the Firebase. And don't ask me, Ripcord's the only one I can remember.
Right. Okay. And there's some others like Bastogne, I think, was one of them in that area. And
I was on one of those, but I'm not sure if it was Bastogne or Rockasson.
Okay. All right. So you spent some.
That was on the way to Ripcord.
Right. Okay. So you've done. So you're in the hill country a fair amount, and then you rotate. You go back to Camp Evans periodically, and then you also go up to the DMZ area. Now, did you ever go into the DMZ that you know of, or did you just stay south of it?
Can't say.
Okay. Did you do any combat assaults in that area?
The mortars, no.
Mm-hmm.
We basically supported the platoons of Charlie Company.
Right. So, how much combat did Charlie Company or the battalion seem to be involved in those first 6 months or so?
When I first got there, the rule of the law, but basically that the NVA and the Viet Cong were scared of the 101st
Mm-hmm.
because of their reputation when they got there, what they started when they got there.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of carried on until, I would say until Ripcord.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably, yeah, I would say, dare say that was the most action of the whole time I was there almost.
Yeah. And so if there's incidents in the field, is it just very short ambushes or snipers or things like that, or?
Well, yeah, a little contact here.
Yeah.
But, and we humped quite a bit through the area.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at one point, one of the guys who'd been there for quite a while, he was getting ready to leave, matter of fact. He was on Hamburg Hill, and he pointed it out to us. Of course, it was across the valley,
Mm-hmm.
but he pointed out the spot where Hamburg Hill was. So I've seen it from a distance.
Yeah. So you've been to the Ashaw Valley then?
Yeah, yes.
All right. And what kinds of risks or dangers were there for somebody who's in a mortar unit? Is it safer than being a regular grunt?
I don't know if it's safer, but the biggest thing is you carry more than they do,
Mm-hmm.
and that's nothing against them. It is, my assigned job was to carry more than them.
Right.
I guess.
But you didn't walk point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, But yeah, if you're there, of course, if a lot of the danger is from stray mortars and snipers, then that could be anybody.
Right.
Yeah. All right. And how would you characterize the morale of the unit in those first 6 months or so?
It seemed to be okay. You know, you had a few here and there that were the protest type.
Mm-hmm.
They were there because they were drafted. You know. But there wasn't. I don't remember very many of them through the whole battalion.
Okay.
Because we, like I said, at night we spent a lot of time in the enlisted club,
Mm-hmm.
and you know you get the whole unit because it was a battalion
Right.
club, so you get the whole unit that comes there,
Mm-hmm.
so you get to talk to different people and stuff. And I didn't see any real dissension or anything.
Right. So people are able to they'll go out there, they'll do their jobs, they'll look after each other,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
do the stuff they're going to do.
Well, you got to depend on that guy next to you to survive. He's got to depend on you, so it's a lot of.
Okay. Did you spend your full year tour with that same mortar section?
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
And over the course of that year, does the personnel turn over? Do you become the old guy?
Yeah. I don't remember a lot of turnover.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there was some, but I don't remember a lot.
And this would just be people finishing their year and rotating out?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so people aren't getting hit and
No.
taken out for that?
No.
Okay. Now, you do the ASHA stuff, you go up to the DMZ for a while, and was that just a temporary assignment
Right.
while they were bringing in other people to take over that part of the front? Okay. And then you kind of get into the spring of 1970,
Mm-hmm.
and starting in March, there are operations around what will become Firebase Ripcord.
Well, that's when I can't remember if I was on Bastogne or Rockefeller.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure which one it was.
Okay, so you're on one of those places before the Ripcord stuff
Right.
starts. Okay.
We kind of did, if I remember, I could be totally wrong, but we did like a circle,
Mm-hmm.
or kind of a half circle. We started out at Camp Evans, we went this way, and Ripcord was over here,
Mhm.
so we kind of did one of these, hit a few spots and stayed for a little bit.
All right.
So,
Now, I guess Ripcord actually gets established as a base in the middle of April, because they try a couple of times to set up shop there, and it's actually Charlie Company that will go up and establish the base.
yeah.
Now, when they first go up in April, are you someplace else, or do you go with them?
That's when we were on these Bastogne
Right.
rocks.
Okay.
We were in range of Ripcord.
All right. And then when do you get to Ripcord?
I believe June,
Okay.
because I remember I went on R&R at the end of June,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember being there to help build our little mortar pit
Right.
and the hooch and stuff. I remember being there for that, so it had to be before. It had to be.
Probably sometime in June or
Yeah.
whatever. Okay. And at the time you were doing it, was it fairly quiet on top of Ripcord?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, because there wasn't. I don't know if we were out in the jungle, if
Mhm.
the grunts were out there or not. Yet, as in full force, like they were.
But you weren't getting bombarded on top of the hill at that
No,
point.
no, that didn't start till
That's July.
1 July.
Yeah. Okay. Where'd you go for R&R?
I went to Thailand.
Okay.
That was my second R&R.
Okay. Where'd you go for the first one?
Australia,
Okay.
Sydney.
All right. So how'd you wind up getting two?
One of the other guys in my squad and I were walking across the company area one day, and the company clerk comes and he said, "Hey," he said, "come here, guys." So we went over there, and he said, "I got a couple R&Rs here." said, Thailand. He said, you guys want them? Because I guess somebody else
Mm-hmm.
had them, but they didn't take them. So he said, sure, I'll go. Because it was, I was there 8 or 9 months before I took my first one.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed that so much. I said, okay, I'll take another one. And then when I came back, I either came back the 2nd or 3rd of July
Mm-hmm.
when I came back to Ripcord. So, you know, the 4th of July was quite interesting.
Is that when you actually fly back out to Ripcord?
No, I was out there on the 2nd or 3rd.
Okay, so you're out there already. Yeah, because so the bombardment is sort of just starting at that point.
Yeah.
All right. Now, before you went on that R&R, so when you were there in June, did you have a lot of fire missions? Were you shooting a lot?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. That's basically what we did all the time. For the 23 days for sure.
Okay. Now, as you're there in a period when the North Vietnamese are increasingly shooting more and more stuff at you, how did that affect what you were doing, or did you just keep doing the same thing the whole time?
We just kept doing the same thing. They if they spotted where these mortar rounds were coming from, then they give us grid or artillery or whoever, because there was another mortar squad up on the other side of the base, and so you know it all came through, depending on how the distance, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And but if they spotted them close enough, we would shoot back at it.
Okay.
They would give us the grid, and we'd shoot back at it.
Now, could you see much of anything of the surrounding area from your position, or are you just hunkered down inside of a pit?
Well, yeah, you could see what. Let me see what else. You could see them back towards Camp Evans.
Mm-hmm.
You could see. Now, so you could see it was a big area. You could see.
Right. If there was fighting at night, could you see the flashes and that kind of thing, or do you not really remember that?
I don't. I was probably busy at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Okay. Now, describe the physical position that you're in and how your mortar is set up. I mean, how much protection do you have, and how is it arranged?
We had the mortar was set in the center of a gun pit. We had sandbags about yay high around the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
We had an ammo bunker in one portion of it, and then we had our hooch was into the side of the hill where we'd put PSP and sandbags and mortar boxes full of dirt
Mm-hmm.
and more sandbags on top of it. So it would have took a pretty heavy something to hit us
Mm-hmm.
to take us out if we were in the hooch.
Right. But if you're actually out there manning the mortar, there's nothing above you.
No, not a thing, except air.
Now, do you know if any of the mortar pits actually got hit during the bombardment?
Yeah, my mortar pit. At one point it was incoming rounds, and I don't remember the day, or because it all kind of like runs together, and I don't remember the day, but it was a round it hit, and the shrapnel got into our ammo bunker and set it on. It hit around and the fuse and set it on fire. So there was a fire in there. I looked out the door of the hooch and I told my squad leader, I said, hey, you got a fire out here in your gun pit. Well, all them guys kind of just crowded into one corner.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, I'm going to save my life, fellas, not really, whatever. So I went out and I had a fire extinguisher and I was putting out the fire, and I heard the incoming round, and I didn't hear it, and so I hit the dirt flat out. And on the other side of the ammo bunker in the corner is where that round landed.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that, of course, it helped me put out the fire with the combat or the impact. And then I finished doing that, and then I went back into the hoot.
So what was actually burning?
We have rounds that the fuses are exposed.
Okay.
The powder packs are exposed.
So that was,
That's what was.
but the actual explosives and the ammunition, but it wasn't cooking off the ammunition at that point.
No,
So
not at that point.
Yeah.
It would have if we'd let it go.
all right.
But yeah, and it was. I felt satisfied afterwards because the round just landed 3 feet away on the other side of a bunker, so I don't get no shrapnel or anything.
Yeah.
So it was interesting.
All right.
When I went back into hooch, I felt satisfied because I know that I had an opportunity to save my life, and of course, in the process, the other folks that were in there with me.
So if the ammunition had exploded, do you think that would have taken out the hooch? Or at least?
I don't know, depends. I guess it would. Because we had HE in there, we had white phosphorus in there, we had illumination in this pit. So,
And if something at least flew into the entrance, that could be unpleasant.
yeah.
Okay. Now, did you have any sense during those weeks there in July of sort of how the larger situation was developing? Was it getting worse on top of the fire base over time, or did it stay about the same?
Well, it got worse. They started, then they started throwing bigger rounds at us. Instead of the 82, they started throwing the 120s at us. And I saw one hole of the 120, and the hole was like probably 4 or 5 feet deep, and I don't know the circumference of it, but it was big.
Yeah. Okay. And this is a conventional artillery round now, or just a bigger mortar?
Just a bigger mortar.
Okay.
They had 120s at the time, or we had 40s, but now we have 120s. So.
Yeah. So it was, but they're coming at you with heavier stuff now. I guess one of the key moments in the campaign was when a big Chinook helicopter crashes and blows up the ammunition for the artillery battery. What do you recall about that incident?
Staying inside the hoosh for 4 hours while it was exploding, and it came over to our side where we were at, and there was part of the hill was between us, but we still got a lot of it. We got the flechette rounds. They were in the sight of our hoosh. So I mean, we got part of it. We got some of the stuff, and stuff would flying around.
Did you get any people from the other side of the hill coming and hiding in your bunkers, or?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't know where they went, but there was only one of them. One that got killed.
Only one got killed, and he was right kind of under the helicopter.
Yeah.
The actual artillery guys, they had enough time apparently to get out, but they lost their ammunition, and their guns blew up. Basically, that whole area was taken out, and so that knocked things out. All right, then and then not too long after that, the decision is made to evacuate the fire base.
Right.
So, what do you remember about that last day?
Running up the hill to the chopper pad, carrying our mortar with us. We were the only squad out of the 3 of us that brought everything back, including the sight, the tripod, the barrel, the base plate. We brought everything back. And then the helicopter that I got on, there was one guy. He went to step on the skid to get in, and his foot slipped. So he got his feet back on the slick because they were coming in, gone. So we kind of held on to him while we got back to Camp Evans.
Was he hanging out of the outside of the helicopter? Yeah. Okay.
So I was holding on to him. There was 1 or 2 other guys holding on to him. He dropped his M16. He tried to go back for that, but the chopper was going, and so that's when we grabbed hold of him to hold him. we got back and we said, hey, the unit will give you a new M16. You don't have to worry about that. You know. So, yeah, it was an interesting place. But when we got back, we were on, I won't say the last job, but we were on one of the last flight that came in, and the NVA were just streaming up the side of the hill.
Okay, so
the door gunners were having a field day.
Okay, so you could see them actually coming out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, because that would be pretty late in the sequence. Because I've heard that from a couple other people. But yeah, all right. Now, are there? I guess when you're living sort of day to day on Ripcord and so forth, how hard is it to go about your business? I mean, eating or anything else like that. How do they manage all of that?
Well, you're just kind of a normal day, basically, except for the fire missions, of course. And you ate around them, and you did your hygiene around what was going on. I don't know.
But did the bombardment make it harder to go out and get supplies or anything else like
Well,
that?
it made you not want to go out, that's for sure.
Okay.
But I don't remember anything that people said, no, I'm not going out there. You know,
Okay.
unless there was it coming around.
Okay. Now, once you get off of Ripcord, do you get any kind of break or stand down, or you go right back in the field?
No. I only had a week left when I came back.
Okay, that's right. So you're right at the end.
Yes.
Okay. Now, so what's the process for getting you back to the States?
You just go through what's called clearing process.
Mm-hmm.
More paperwork. And more paperwork. But over there it was like, okay. You know, because when we got back, we went to Eagle Beach,
Mm-hmm.
which is the 101st R&R
Right.
area. And we spent 2-3 days there. So when we came back, I only had 3 or 4 days left.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay. But they asked me if I wanted to go back out there,
Mm-hmm.
right into the. I said, I told the first sergeant, I said no. I said you can do to me what you need to do. I said, but I'm not going.
Mm-hmm.
So he finally settled. It was okay. I did.
Yeah. Well, you're that short. I think that is not
Oh,
that
yeah.
unusual.
Yeah. But one thing is that when we got back to Camp Evans, we could stand on the helipad and watch the B-52 strike.
Mm-hmm.
You could actually see the B-52 strike. That was awesome to me to see.
Well, what could you see from there? Because you're some number of miles. Could you actually see the aircraft, or?
No, you see the bombs.
Okay.
It's hard to see them B-52.
Yeah. The way up there.
Because they had, the way I understand it, as soon as everything was cleared, everybody was off there.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was one body they didn't get, I think. But when they were given the okay, the B-52s came right in, and then the jets came in behind them, and then napalm came in. So and from what I understand from one of the guys I met in Fort Hood, Texas, after I was back in the States, he said they went back out there after the whole thing was done. He said it was like the whole hill was one level.
Mm-hmm.
The top of the hill was all one level instead of a couple levels over there when I was. So
All right. Where do you fly out of from Vietnam?
I left from I left for Cameron Bay.
Okay. All right. And then where do you land in the States?
Seattle.
Okay. Now, when you get there, do they just out process you right there and discharge you, or?
No, because I had time left.
Okay, you still have some time. But your year was up, but in Vietnam that was up, but you still have some time left on the enlistment. Okay. So what do they do with you once you get to I guess, Fort Lewis or wherever you're processing?
Well, when you process in, they give you a new set of greens, with shoes and all this stuff new, and then they give you time to, they tailor them right there, you know, whatever you need to do, they do them right there, and sew all your stuff on and everything for you. So it was interesting, and you had time to go to the PX and buy your medals and stuff if you wanted them. And I didn't go, but another guy went for me, because we compared each other's records and said, "Oh, okay," you know. So he brought me the same thing he had, which according to the records was what we had. But yeah, I went to the mess hall and you had steak, big steak, good steak, any way you wanted. And so I had two of them actually. So I talked to the mess sergeant, finagled me another one.
Right.
You know.
Okay. And then you got to leave home for a while before you report to your next station, or?
Yeah, I flew back. I went back to Michigan.
Okay. Now, on the way back, did you see any protesters or have any trouble?
Oh yes. Harry Kirshner at Detroit Airport, and I was fine with, because I was talking to my brother, and my mother had come, my girlfriend had come, and I don't know if there's anybody else or not. I think probably. Just my brother and I were walking along talking and stuff, and I didn't mind Eric Kirstner's. I didn't mind all their chants or music or songs. That all didn't bother me until one of them spit on me, and that wasn't pleasant for him. I'll say that. And the policeman he didn't arrest me or anything. He just come up to me and he said, "No," he said, "it's not worth it." He said. He said you probably could get away with it, but because you're just now coming back from Vietnam, he said, so probably be a light sentence. He said, but it's not worth it. So him and a couple other ones escorted me and the family by the ferry course. So that was interesting.
Yeah. Now, did you know ahead of time that kind of thing was going to happen, or did they warn you at Fort Lewis?
Yeah, I heard the story. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, where do you go next? Where do you finish out your enlistment?
Fort Hood, Texas.
Okay.
Fort Hood, Texas.
And what was your job down there?
Mortars.
Okay. And now, did you just train other people or do anything?
The company that I was in was basically returnees from Vietnam. So they didn't have a lot for us to do, you know. So you kind of just cruised along as it was, you know, do your daily work, and that was about it.
Okay. Now, there were some times where there were various sorts of troubles at Fort Hood. There was racial tension at the time, and you're getting more drugs coming in from other places and so forth. Did you see any of that kind of thing?
Yes, but it was resolved between us. We were on one floor of the barracks, and on the second floor there was other folks.
In other units, or?
No, same company.
Okay.
Just, but all the mortars were on one floor. There probably was, maybe a dozen of us, or 15 at the most, probably. So we were all on one floor, open bay, windows, you didn't have no curtains on them and stuff. It was interesting, fun. But the guys upstairs, there was a few up there that kind of didn't like us in their area. So there was some conflict, and but it was resolved between us. So it wasn't. wasn't a big thing because we were able to resolve it
Right,
amongst us.
right.
So, yeah.
Okay. Now, you know, one of the standard stereotypes about Vietnam and that whole era is things like drug use and stuff. Now, did you see much of that, or on base, or off, or?
Yeah. You know, you had the black power thing going on back then, and things like that, and of course the KKK and all that kind of stuff. You saw some of it, but not in the abundance
Right.
that probably was in the news.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess with the drug thing, I mean, would people smoke pot on the bases in Vietnam, or?
Oh yeah, I smoked them in the bunkers. So you know, I fortunately stayed away from that. I was more on the alcohol side.
Right. Yeah, you're the EM club and the beer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how much time did you spend at Fort Hood?
The rest of my time was, well, I got in a car accident, broke my hand, so I got extra time because my doctor says that, he said, the Army can't use your broken hand. He said, so he said, let me get hold of the Red Cross. He did. They called me, we got things all set, and I spent another probably 30 days at home, I think. And then they took the cast off and stuff, and when I went to Fort Hood, I think it was October
Okay.
1970, and then I spent my rest of my time until February.
Okay. And then what did you now? Had they made any effort to get you to reenlist?
Yeah, they always do. There wasn't a big push to reenlist, but they did ask you, especially if you had the U.S. on your service number. It was like,
Oh, wait, the U.S. is for draftees, though, right? So.
yeah, well, they try to give them because I guess they figured the rest of us were just gonna stay.
Right, the regular Army more likely to stay. Okay, so what did you do after you got out?
I went home, took some time, and, for a few weeks. Then I looked for a job, got a job, and then well, I worked a few jobs the next few years. Then I got married. In the following year, in '74, I got married in '73. But in '74 we had a child, and then that's back when the economy was kind of an iffy economy.
Yeah.
I had a job working for PepsiCo, and but you know I was the low man on the totem pole, so I wasn't sure. But then I thought about it, talked it over with the wife, and I said, you know, if I go back in the Army, I said, at least I have a steady paycheck and a steady job. And I know, I said, well, I don't think I hope I didn't get fired from it, but, we discussed it, and that's when I came back in February '75.
In the meantime, did you have any trouble adjusting just to being a civilian again, or was that transition fairly smooth?
Now, I had a little trouble, but otherwise it was pretty smooth.
Okay. And so basically you didn't have issues with the Army, though, on a level that would keep you from going back in?
No.
What were you expecting when you enlisted? Just to have a steady job, or what did you think you were going to do?
I didn't know. I tried to go back in to the engineers when I went back in, and the guy at AFES told me, he said, we talked, and he said that he checked his computer or whatever, and then he went somewhere else and checked a couple other places. And he came back and he said, well, you said, the only thing we have in heavy equipment is a crane operator. And I said, well, with the training and stuff, I said, I probably could do that. So he said, okay, so I'll be right back. So he left, and he came back, and kind of in a slouch.
Mm-hmm.
The job was already taken.
Mm-hmm.
So the slot was, so I'm like, okay, let's try the infantry. I know I can go there.
Mm-hmm.
But he did manage to get me back into the mortars.
Okay.
I spent the rest of my time in mortars too.
All right. And so where did they send you now? You sign up, now where do you go?
Where'd I go? I went to Fort Leonard, Missouri,
Mm-hmm.
to it's called a refresher course for veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was like 3 weeks or so long. And they went through they went through which part of what you went through a basic training.
Mm-hmm.
That, and like I say, we were only there 3 weeks.
So do you have to like qualify on an M16 or anything like that? No, because you're mortars, so they don't care. Or
No, nobody had to.
okay, just reminding you how the military works.
Basically,
Okay.
the regulations and UMCJ.
UCMJ.
Yeah.
Yeah, Code of Military Justice. Yeah.
They had on that, and then they had the other courses like just the basics.
Right. Okay. And then do you go to a unit from there?
Yes, I went to Fort Ord, California. Or no, excuse me, went to Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Okay. And what unit did you join, or were you just with the training command, or?
Well, yes, we were the training command because we had to go through, the Army says we had to go through more training,
Oh, okay.
AIT. We got to the unit, there was 3 of us. There were prior service. And we'd all been mortars before,
Mm-hmm.
so we went to, I think we went to about 5 days of training. And the training NCO then had arranged to get us a job in a company. So
Mhm.
we didn't have to go through the training, but we would spend our time there.
Yeah.
But I went and worked in the orderly room. One guy went and worked in the training office, and then one guy went and worked in the supply room. So
Okay. Now what do you do next?
after that, AIT was over with.
Mm-hmm.
Went to Fort Ord, California, to 7th Infantry Division. I don't remember the unit, but
Okay. And how long did you spend there?
a year,
Okay.
a little over a year. I got, then I went to, I spent 2 years there, 3 years there.
Okay.
But
Now
in
you-
1978, 9, I went to Korea.
Okay. Let's just talk a little bit about the time in California here. What was it like just being in the Army again? Was it an easy adjustment, or?
Well, yes, because things had got easier, actually. And the pay, when Nixon gave the big pay raise,
Mhm.
so, it was still interesting. When, because at Fort Ord, it was kind of the start of the 7th Division,
Mhm.
the beer can. But of course, beer cans wouldn't look like
Mhm.
the patch. But they were just kind of, they'd already formed, but it was in the early stages of getting people in there and stuff. And the option was presented to me to go to Fort Ord, I said, hey, you know,
California?
California, yeah, here we come.
All right. Now, did you live off base because you were married, or did they have quarters for people who were married?
My wife, that's the time she was having the baby.
Mm-hmm.
So she stayed back in Michigan.
Right. Okay.
And after she had the baby, a couple months after that, I brought her out there, and then we lived off post. We lived in Salinas.
Salinas, yeah.
Salinas.
All right. And was that a good place to be? I mean, do you enjoy being in California, or?
Sure, yeah. Like I said, they were just starting to form, so
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't other than training, there wasn't a lot to do.
Okay.
You know, except guard duty and stuff like that. But yeah, there wasn't much to do. So I was fun.
Okay. All right. Now at this point, this tape is about up, so we're going to pause here. All right. Now in your story, we've gotten you into the late 70s here. You spent some time at Fort Ord, California. You're with the 7th Division, and then I guess your next assignment going out of there is to go to Korea. Okay. So tell us about that. What unit did you join, and what did you do there?
I was in the 2nd Division.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I was there, I was in the first to the 38th. Yeah, headquarters company. Yeah, headquarters company.
Okay. Now this is an infantry battalion. Was the structure similar to what you had in Vietnam, and that there was a headquarters company that had a mortar platoon in it, or?
Well, later on, the headquarters became the Echo Company.
Mm-hmm.
With the snipers, the recon, and all that
Mm-hmm.
has gone to or the headquarters company.
Okay.
And I believe Echo Company is eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
So they just moved things.
Yeah.
Is all they did.
Okay. Now, were you based up near the DMZ, or were you someplace else?
Oh, yes. I was based near the DMZ. Well, I was, I can't think of the name of the place now. Second time I was at Camp Hovey. Can't remember.
So when did you arrive in Korea?
I believe it was in '79.
Okay. So if somebody looks up where the 2nd Division was in '79, they'll know roughly where you were.
It was 78 or 79.
Okay.
But I'm sure it was. Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Now, at the time that you got there, was there much activity along the DMZ? Were the North Koreans trying to stir up any trouble, or was it fairly quiet?
They tried to stir trouble every day.
Mm-hmm.
We, of course, the unit I was with, we took our rotation on the DMZ.
Mm-hmm.
And so the mortars were set up right near Panmunjom.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the name of the place either, but we were set up near there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure you were there. So I'm it's a little vague.
Sure. Okay. Now, if you mentioned the North Koreans are trying to stir things up all the time, what kinds of things would they do?
Well, one thing that they did my second time over there was we lost a patrol. A patrol got lost, and they ended up in a minefield. And so in order to extract them, they had to use a helicopter. couldn't find anybody to fly that helicopter, except for one pilot. And he was in the, I talked to that pilot after, when he brought the guys back to Camp House. Camp
Yeah. It's like HOWSE as opposed to house with.
I can't remember.
Okay. I could vaguely familiar. Okay. Anyway, but then you talked to the pilot, so.
Name twist right there.
Okay.
When they brought him back to the base, they said, I talked to the pilot, and he said, I mean, he was proud that he was the only one that would fly it, because he was a Vietnam pilot in Vietnam. So he knew what it was about. And because he had landed up there near where these guys were at. And of course, it was like North Korea was there. So they extracted him finally. But the pilot was the only guy that would do it.
Okay.
And he was a pilot in Vietnam.
Right. Were the others afraid of getting shot at, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. And did the North Koreans shoot at him, as far as you know?
I don't know that for sure.
Okay. All right. No, but would the North Koreans try to kind of probe their way into our lines or any trouble like that?
Yeah.
And now with the mortars, did you ever actually have any fire missions?
No. We almost did one, but no.
Okay. Did they ever use the mortars to provide illumination at night?
Well, that's what the mission would have been.
Okay.
And I can't say that. No. Artillery fired illumination for that.
Okay. Did you have any South Koreans attached to your unit, or do you see anything? Okay, so infantry might have had them, but you didn't with the mortars.
Right.
And I don't know, what was your impression of Korea at that time? I mean, you've been to Vietnam, now you're in Korea. What's the difference?
Oh, Korea was a confused state. Just, there was a lot of, between the people and the government, and, you know, it's just, people defecting from North Korea to South Korea.
Right.
And things like, which happens more than people know about.
So there were actual North Koreans trying to still come through the DMZ and get down to where you were? Or?
Well, there's a certain part of the DMZ where they come through.
Okay.
But, I was on, I don't remember when it was, but I was on a place where it was some type of, I believe, an observation post type, but it was on, I don't remember exactly where it was, but the North Koreans were right across the river, right across the, whatever. And they would actually shoot it at the observation post, not trying to hit anything or anything, just shoot at us. Yeah. So while they were doing that, you had to kind of stay down below the sandbags. That was interesting. And just things like that. Just they were interesting to do. The different things that we did. Like I believe my last tour was 80, 81, 83. I went there in 79, I went back in 81, I stayed till 83.
Okay.
I got 3 tours over there in
All right. Yeah.
4 years.
Okay.
However it works.
Now, when you're over in Korea, I mean, did your family come out there, or did they just stay back?
I didn't have a family.
Okay.
Well, I did have one, I'm sorry. I did have one. But things weren't going well back at home.
Okay. All right. So but that's a lot of time over. So it kind of makes a certain amount of sense that those 3 tours in that short amount of space kind of run together, and it's all pretty much the same era. Now, this is a period when South Korea was kind of moving its way into being something resembling an actual democracy. So that you're talking, so whether kind of that a period of change just within South Korea that was going on? Okay.
Yeah, basically, that was what was going on. I don't know a lot about it because until my last tour, because I was married, my other wife and I got a divorce, and I was married to a Korean girl, so I got to see the country from the Korean eye, and we went a lot of places and stuff. It was interesting, really interesting.
Okay. What impression did you have at that point then of Korea and the Koreans?
Well, they to me they were people.
Okay.
You know, when you got away from the civilization and like go by their shrines and monuments and stuff like that, the people there didn't see very many American people. So when you went, me and my wife went there, it was like, wow, you know, they just stare at you. And my wife told me, she says, don't stare back because staring head down is not polite. And I'm like, well, they could stare at me, but I can't stare at them. You know? So, but yeah, it was interesting. I got to see different aspects of the country that way, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Good.
All right. Now, in between the tours in Korea in that period, where did you go back to in the States?
The first time I came back to Fort Hood, I don't know. Second time I came back to Fort Ord, and I guess that was it.
Okay.
No, went to Sacramento Army Depot.
Okay.
I was there on a hardship because my Korean wife, we lost our son. We came back to the States, and she was 7 months pregnant. Well, that night she had labor pains and stuff. So of course we were staying with my mom and stepfather, and we had no doctor or anything. And my sister-in-law, step-sister-in-law, she called up her doctor or obstetrician.
Yeah.
She called him, and he agreed to take care of her. So, but they had to take the baby by C-section because the cord was wrapped around his throat, and after that it was he lived for 27 hours. He was at UC Davis in California, or Sacramento, where he finally passed away. And so they brought him back up to Reading, where my mother lived, and that's where we buried him.
Yeah.
And and Oriental people are very family attached. Well, it kind of made her go a little crazy. I sent her back to Korea for a month just with her mom, so that they maybe was being around her family and stuff would kind of slow things down, you know. But it didn't work out.
Okay.
But I was stationed there in Sacramento at an Army depot for that reason.
All right. Now, had that been your last tour to Korea? Yeah. Okay. And so, now where do you go? After Sacramento?
We went to Germany.
Okay. And where did you go in Germany?
Schaffenburg.
Schaffenburg?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And what division were you with, or?
3rd,
There we go, 3rd Division.
3rd IE.
Okay, and then, so about what year was that now?
85, 86.
Okay, mid-80s. So you still got a Cold War going on. And what was the sort of official mission of your division at that point, or why were you there?
Support. That's the main reason. That's my assumption, of course, that the main reason we were there was to support the Allies.
Mm-hmm. But was your division supposed to kind of, defend some sector against the Soviet attack, or?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Okay, I didn't tell you.
No.
All right. What was life in Germany like?
We enjoyed it. But we enjoyed it. That was our 3rd time there. So, but we enjoyed it. I liked living on the economy.
Mm-hmm.
The place that we had wasn't far from the post, and I enjoyed it there.
How did the Germans seem to treat American soldiers?
I think they treat them okay.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any problems with them. So, other than that, I don't know.
Now, what kind of work were you actually doing?
Mortars.
Was it still mortars? And now, are you commanding a unit?
In charge.
Okay. And now, I guess you've been in the Army now for a while, and you were in the Army had a lot of draftees and things like that, and now you've been in the all-volunteer Army for some time. How is one different from the other, or was it all pretty much the same?
I just think the discipline is one that had changed over the years. They tell me nowadays they have the troops have a timeout card. I'm like, wow. And but I tried to treat my troops fair and square for everyone, no matter what, if they'd done something. I still tried to feed them all fair and square.
Do you think the quality of the recruits is similar? I mean, do you have people in 1985 who were as good as the people that you worked with in 1970, or?
Well, I think I think the quality increased, and I say that because you're in the all volunteer army now, where before it was a draft and volunteer army.
Okay, so the people who want to be there and that for you was helpful.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So that's about it.
Okay, so you're in Germany, and then you come back from Germany, and what's the next assignment?
Fort Riley, Kansas.
Okay, what do you do there?
Mortars.
Okay.
And I did S3. I was S3 NCIC.
Okay, now is that operations? Yeah. Now was that a more interesting job, or did you?
Yeah.
Okay, what would you actually do in that job?
You plan the training schedules for the battalion, and it's an interesting part because you're the S3 is and the S2, which is intelligence, are basically the nucleus of the battalion. Besides S4, they're kind of like on their own, so that's
supply and logistics and so forth.
Yeah.
But in terms of planning what you're actually going to do or what exercises you'll have,
S3,
yeah. All right.
S3 did that.
Okay. And so now do you work with the officers who were staff officers running the battalion? Yeah. What impression do you have, I guess, of the officers that you worked with, particularly, or what range did you see?
I don't know. It's hard to say because I seem to, and I don't understand it, but I seem to get along with the majors up
Mm-hmm.
instead of the captains down. And I don't really understand that. But,
Well, when you were back in, were you maybe closer in age to the majors and lieutenant colonels than you were to the lieutenants and captains, or?
well, could be.
Okay.
But especially when I was working in S3
Mm-hmm.
in the battalion, the major was in charge of S3. He's the assistant battalion commander. He's not called that. I don't know what he's called. The major,
Mm-hmm.
and then the lieutenant colonel. They all liked me.
Mm-hmm.
When you go back to the company, to the captain
Mm-hmm.
and lieutenant, I won't say they didn't like me. They just didn't seem to like me.
Okay. All right. So you're at Fort Riley now. Is that the post you were at when the Desert Storm stuff started up, or?
Right.
Okay. And then what? And I guess as that was approaching, I mean, Saddam goes and invades Kuwait. Did that kind of put people on alert, or had you been on alert earlier, or what was? How did things gear up for you to get involved in that?
Orders.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
But was it after the invasion of Kuwait that things started to happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my memory. Yeah, I think that was what it happened. Yeah, because we started doing more training and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But and then I went back to the mortar platoon.
Mm-hmm.
I was like a bouncing ball.
Okay. So you leave the S3, and now do you know why that happened? Do they just want somebody with experience to be there, or?
Well, I was one of the few in the division that had combat experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the reason I went back.
Right. And now, at that point, what was your role in the mortar platoon? Were you kind of the senior
Platoon
sergeant? Yeah.
Platoon sergeant.
Okay. And so, did they send you? Did you just train at Fort Riley? Did you go someplace else, or what happens?
We went to NTC, National Training Center, California. Fort
Okay.
Irwin.
All right. And then, is that as far as you go, or do you go overseas now?
Yeah, I think we did after that. The memory.
Okay.
More,
But do you actually get involved in the Desert Storm operation itself?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So talk about that. How do you get out there? What do you do?
Well, we first thing we had to do was put all of our equipment on a train to go to Houston to be put on a boat to be taken over there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was accomplished. Then the troops were manifested for flights. And you got on the flight that you were supposed to get on. And then you went over there. We stopped in, the plane I was on stopped in Greece. And then we went to Saudi Arabia.
All right. And then what did you do once you got there?
Then you had to organize again because you had to receive your equipment.
Mm-hmm.
They usually try, I'm assuming this now, they usually try to get the troops there after their equipment got there. So we're talking a month.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, did all the men go together, or did they send some of you ahead of the rest? Or you went with the main group anyway?
We all basically went with the main group.
Okay.
But when the group moved, I and some of the other, like the supply and some of the other soldiers we were sent forward and to establish an area. So, and, my wife was in the same convoy I was in. So she was in Desert Storm also. And so we got up there. I was the first one up there. One of the first group up there. And then we kind of established a place. We dug bunkers and did stuff like that.
Now, what division were you with at this point?
First ID.
The First Infantry Division. Okay. All right. And once you kind of went into that position, how long did you wind up staying there?
I don't remember.
You feel like weeks or
Yeah,
months or whatever?
it wasn't a long time.
Okay.
Because we were up there, and I was in this. Of course, I ended up in charge of this group, and then we. So after we were all dug in and everything, it wasn't a night or two after that I heard the B-52s, and I said, I heard them and I laid there, and I said, George, you started the war, didn't you? Because I heard them going north.
Okay. Now, where was your division positioned? Kind of along the Kuwaiti border? Was it farther out in the desert, or do you not really know?
We were on the Saudi-Iraq border.
Okay, so you're a little farther west then. Right. And when how much long after you heard those B-52s did you start to move?
It was, the rest of the people weren't even there yet.
Okay.
So it was a few days, because they had the convoy from the port to where I was at.
All right. But now, had the ground attack started, or was it just air attacks at this point?
It was the air.
Okay. So that's going on. And what had you been told what maybe to expect from the Iraqis or what you might run into?
No.
Okay.
Not a thing.
All right.
Just given a grid coordinates to go to. And that's where I took the group I was with.
All right. And then when the ground war actually gets launched, now what happens to you?
I was back with the mortars. We took some training before that in the chemical suits and putting them on and times and all that, timing and putting your mask on and stuff. We did quite a bit of that.
Okay. So you were told to expect that they might have chemical weapons.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of a known fact.
Well, they had used them already against Iran, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, that's where we were.
But then when the ground attack starts, do you move forward or you just stay where you are?
Well, we moved into Iraq.
Okay.
Because we were in Saudi. We moved into Iraq.
Right.
And we did a we moved across. We started across Iraq. And then we ended up at where they had the peace talks. I don't remember the name. Because I had some of my soldiers volunteered to go to the peace talks and guard the peace talks. So.
Now, did your unit actually fire anything, or did you just move?
Yeah.
Okay.
We did some missions.
All right. Do you have a sense of what kind of opposition there was, or what the situation was?
They had artillery, and they had mortars, and we took out an artillery group piece with my section, my two sections.
Are you still using 81 millimeter mortars? Do you have bigger ones?
40s. We
Okay.
were in track vehicle.
Okay, so, all right, so you've got these are bigger mortar tubes, and they're mounted inside vehicles, so you can roll right along with the rest of the unit.
Yeah.
And how much range did you have on those?
I want to say 4,800 meters, but I think it was more than that. not sure.
Okay, so, several miles, anyway. And then did you have better aiming systems and things than they did? I mean, normally artillery should shoot mortars, but you took them out.
Yeah. The enemy, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We took some incoming rounds in one place as we were moving. And my soldiers, they were all trained on what to do if you take incoming rounds. Well, they didn't react the way they were supposed to. They all jumped on the ground and when I yelled incoming. And I let them go for a little bit. And I said, I jumped. I said, what are you guys supposed to do when you take incoming round? Well, then part of it clicked. So
Yeah.
They did move forward like they were supposed to.
Remember, well, that's that first time in combat thing, isn't it? You really don't know how you're going to react until it happens. And some people immediately start following their training and others don't.
Yeah, I agree. That was an interesting point to me. And then until I thought back to my first time of incoming rounds, I was like, okay.
Back there it sounds so new. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and now you're the veteran is part of why it's a good thing to have the veteran out there with a combat unit.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we kept moving. We captured, or we didn't capture. There was a perimeter set up by the people had, the enemy had there, and it was funny because there was no one there, but the bunkers were all there. There was equipment laying around. Of course, my soldiers all wanted to stop and explore, so I let them stop for a few minutes. And in the meantime, it was a 60 millimeter mortar sitting there by itself, not booby trap, nothing. The ammo was sitting right there. So I said, well, just in case I get caught somewhere with my Humvee. Me and my driver picked up the 60, put it in the back of my Humvee, picked up the rounds, put it in the back of the Humvee. So I had that with me. I had a 60 machine gun. I had my driver and I had an M16. I had a 9 millimeter. So we were pretty. And we had a AT4, the anti-tank one. So we were pretty well supplied in case we got stuck somewhere in our Humvee, going back and forth in a Humvee. So we were pretty well supplied.
Okay.
Well, we had AK-47 rounds with us too. I probably shouldn't say that.
Don't think you get in trouble at this point. But the war itself doesn't last very long.
No. That's because I contributed to the bombing of Iraq. And it drove Hussein out of Iraq, out of
Kuwait.
Yeah. Because that's what the peace talks that my people were involved in, the Guard. That's what it was all about. My brigade commander bluffed the enemy. There was only there was a battalion there, and they were surrounded by a division, I believe, and he spoofed them, and he told them, but they met, and then he told them, he said, look guys, he said, you can either surrender now or pay the price. So I guess however it worked out, they ended up having the peace talks there. So he bluffed them.
Yeah. Although on some level, given the air superiority and what was being done to the Iraqis from the air, he might not have been that far off on his bluff.
Yeah. Well, we had all of our modern equipment there too.
Yeah.
And, I won't say that Hussein's Hussein's equipment was modern. It's not.
No.
Was not, so.
Yeah. And that's one of the stories of that, is that the tanks that blow up when they don't even see what's shooting at them and that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, so basically that's something where, your unit presumably didn't take any casualties, or just a few, or whatever.
Well, a few that, one that I know of that did it, they did it themselves. They were playing with the, what do you call it? Cluster bombs
Mm-hmm.
that the Air Force dropped. They were playing with one of them.
Oh, good.
I got his foot. I'm like, duh.
It's just unexploded ordnance that was
The
out.
most, I say this because I believe this, the most deaths and injuries we had over there were because of us.
Mm-hmm.
We were first time people in war, shooting anything,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that there was some that did damage to our own people. And the unit that I was with in Germany was over there.
Mm-hmm.
It's over there in Kuwait too, or in that area. And I had run into them before everything moved to the field.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the scout platoon sergeant, I knew him. He ended up losing a leg because he had they're not sure. Well, at the time they weren't sure if it was an RPG or one of our rounds that went through his Bradley,
Mm-hmm.
and he ended up losing a leg, part of it. And but he wanted to, the guys that I talked to afterwards, he said he still wants to stay
Mm-hmm.
in the Army. So whether he did or not,
Not sure what the Army does at that point, but okay. So friendly fire was
a lot of our casualties.
one hazard. Now, you had mentioned previously that you were concerned about chemical weapons. Were any of them used on you, or did you encounter anything?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Not that I know of.
So it was just the prospect of having to deal with them and all the preparation you had ahead of time that made you concerned. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, that was my main concern was the chemicals.
Now, how long did you wind up spending in the Middle East?
5 months, a little over 5 months.
Okay.
So I went there in January, came home in May.
Okay. All right. Now, how much longer did you stay in the Army after that?
Until 1993, I retired.
Okay. So that's not, so where, did you go back to Fort Riley after this?
Yeah.
Okay. And did that.
And that's where my wife and I retired.
Okay. Now, I guess to look back at all of this, I mean, you spent a good chunk of your adult life in the Army. You had the first tour in Vietnam and then the longer extended period after that. How do you think that affected you, or what have you taken out of that experience?
Well, of course, there's good things that
Mhm.
came out of it, but there's a lot of bad things. And I was diagnosed with PTSD
Mm-hmm.
in 2000, because it took me that long to get there. A friend of mine that has PTSD helped me get there.
Mm-hmm.
Because before that, I relied a lot on alcohol to suppress, and now I don't drink at all, so imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
But, I enjoyed the life experiences,
Mm-hmm.
the different places I got to see and things that I would have never seen on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Korea, Japan, Alaska, in Vietnam. So, places I would never went to on my own.
Right.
Even though they were blimps sometimes, you stayed there for an hour while they refueled the plane and stuff, but, I was there at one point, so I enjoyed the travel. And after you get out, it's like, because in the military, at the time, you were moving probably every 3 years, you'd be moving somewhere. And, and to stay at a place, one place for a long period of time was like, wow. I now, my wife and I both have been out longer than we were in. Well,
All right. Now, did you take another kind of job after you got out, or what have you done since?
we drove truck. My wife and I drove semi together. And, at first, it was a little hairy because you're combined in that area for 24/7. So it's a little experience.
Yeah. But you are still married.
Yes, we are. And then I did that for 8 to 10 years somewhere. But and then after that, I retired, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Well, no. Military pensions are good things. All right. Now, if you kind of look back on your military career, is there anything that kind of stands out in your memory that you haven't brought into the story here, or that you want to bring in?
The change in discipline. They don't get the discipline nowadays that they did back then.
Right.
And I think that's probably where a lot of the problems in the military are coming today, because they don't have the discipline, the younger soldier. And I don't know, because I don't associate a lot with soldiers. Out on the golf course, you see them sometimes. But they just closed the golf course in Fort Riley. But out there, used to see some and talk to them. But other than that, I don't have a lot to do with that duty. So I don't know. I know some, but I don't know a lot of what goes on out there.
All right, but well, you've had a pretty remarkable career in its own way, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time and sharing it today.
You're welcome.